Hey guys, Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina. Welcome to the Sunday Night Live Stream Show. Tonight's a special show. We're not only going to be giving away free fishing trips, $1,500 in free fishing trips, but I've got my good friend Scott Snook here. Scott_Snook on Instagram. If you're not following him, you are missing out. This guy is a beach fishing legend, I would say. And we're going to be picking his brain tonight, learning a little bit more about how you can get out there on the beach this summer and have a great chance at hooking up with some fish, maybe even some really big snook. So super excited to be chatting with Scott tonight. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, no problem.
It's going to be a good time.
I'm here because I lost a bet. I'll just let you know. I was a little nervous about coming in, but I pay up my bets.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get you on the show for a while now, so I'm really happy that Amy beat you, and we got you here. So
yep, I'm here.
We've come full circle, and I'm excited to be chatting with you tonight, and we're going to get into that very shortly. So definitely stay tuned because I'm even going to learn a lot tonight with you guys. So definitely going to be an interesting beach fishing university, I would say, tonight. But first, we want to make sure we give a shout out to our friends over at Gator Jim's Tackle. Remember, this show is brought to you by our friends over at Gator Jim's Tackle, 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. Make sure you stop on by and tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you. They have an incredible selection, killer deals, really, really great people, great staff. It is stuffed to the gills with tons of rods, reels, tackle, and more. Plus, they do it all over there at Gator Jim's Tackle with live bait, dead bait. You definitely are missing out. If you haven't stopped by, make sure you tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you as well. It's 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. So stop by Gator Jim's Tackle and thank them for helping us do this Sunday night show. Also want to make sure we give a shout out to all our y'all will get it figured out. That's weird how it would just drop audio quickly. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Must be me.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes,
Bad vibes.
you know, we do our best with the show, but sometimes these weird things happen. You never know.
It's fine.
And it's not the Roadcaster, huh? That's a weird one. Audio is back. They can hear us now. Mick Higgins said he can hear us now. The comments are a little bit delayed, so it's hard.
I'm not seeing anything making a dinging noise.
Yeah. Weird. Well, we're back. So let's go ahead and give a shout out to those who sent stars. We had a little bit of a false start this morning or this afternoon when we started. So originally we had Larry White send a big 500 stars. Thanks, Larry. Mick Higgins, Brian Eakins with 250. Appreciate you as well. Adam Franklin, Stephanie Lockhart, John Bull, Ryan Welser, Terry Nakahoma, Yukimi Barker, Gary Camage, James McCullum with the big 500. Thanks, James. Robert Bush, Nick Nieves with a big 1,000. Jeff Markham, Scott Flynn, Jeff Reedy with a big 1,200. Laura Cambrone, Jessica Cock, and LaShonda Brown with 400. And Larry White with a big 500 again. Appreciate y'all for the stars. They're getting the chime notifications. I don't know where that one's coming from. Josh is working on it, though, guys. We'll see if we can't figure that one out. So, the stars.
Yeah, how
you
does
were
that
asking
work?
me.
Yeah. I've had a couple people say, well, what does that do? How does it work?
Yeah, so the stars are just a way for people watching on Facebook. If you go to actually comment on the video, it actually appears next to the comments, so you'll see it. It's hard to show you guys watching because you can't really see it, but if you go to comment, it'll give you that option of doing here, I'll show you on my personal one. So when you go to comment on the main show, right next to the comment box on Facebook, you'll see the little stars icon.
Okay.
And that little stars icon is the way that you have the opportunity to see the little star right there. And so right next to the comment button, you can have the option to click that star and then send stars. And it's a way to support the show. It helps us to do more cool things, and all the camera equipment and audio equipment in here and all the interesting toys that we play with to make the show run even smoother.
Well, good. I was wondering how that worked, and That's through Facebook.
That's through
Okay.
Facebook. You can do a super chat on YouTube if you'd like as well, so that works. But on Facebook, it's the stars that are the option. And the Supporters Club. Anybody can join the
Right.
Supporters Club, and that helps fuel the show. And then, of course, our friends over at Gator Gyms Tackle and our friends at Innovative Pools and Spa as well. So appreciate everybody for sure. Let's get right into these photos. Josh is going to keep trying to diagnose the dinging. If you guys notice the dinging goes away, let us know. But we're going to get right into the photos here and show you guys what we've been catching inshore and nearshore. Then we're going to run through the weather with you guys. And then once we're done with the weather, we will, of course, get right back into questions with Scott. So we're going to be talking all about beach snook fishing for sure. The chimes might be a Streamlab notification.
Yeah, it was an alert box.
Yeah, that alert box will get you.
I think I got it.
I think we turned off the chime, so let us know. All right, so let's get right into the question or the photos here and show you guys what we've been catching inshore. Pompano, man, kind of a weird year for Pompano.
Yep. You can't really go and target them right now, but
Yeah.
they've been a good bycatch.
But aren't Pompano normally like they start to get real, I would say, more common in the spring, and then we start to see them real heavy like April, May-ish generally, and they get kind of like almost peak, I would say, like May, June.
Yeah, I think so.
And we didn't see that.
Right. It's been a weird year for
Yeah.
snook and everything. It's just things are running late. I probably have caught a few more pompano than I normally do. Typically, kind of a little tip, I look for drum and mullet schools, and pompano tend to stay with them because they're stirring up the bottom, they're stirring up crabs, they're stirring up sand fleas, and those pompano tend to hang with them. So whenever I see that, that's when I kind of target them a little bit more. So that's I very seldom catch them just randomly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I always thought like that pompano would be cruising an area because they're so fast swimming, and they generally cruise like right down that sandy gully, and it seems like you would target them in the structure and in the area that they'd be cruising. But
Well,
you're saying you're sight fishing them based on other fish.
Kind of, yeah. You're sight fishing the other fish, and you're just hoping that there's some with them. And like I said, I don't think they're just necessarily hanging with them the whole time, but as they come by, that's where they're going to show up, is on the outsides of those schools. So that's how I've done pretty good. And I got one the other day that was
Crazy.
21 inches.
That's a big pompano,
That's a pretty good
21-inch
size.
pompano.
Yeah.
That's solid. Also, some redfish action, and you know this guy, huh?
Yeah, that's one of my friends, Amy's cousin, and he was so stoked that you were able to get his picture up there. He was turning 13 the next day, so this was his birthday surprise. So
That's awesome.
He's stoked.
13 years old. Happy birthday. Do you remember his name?
Roy.
Roy. Happy birthday, Roy. That's awesome. Nice redfish action. I would say the redfish bite has slowed down a little bit. Have you been seeing a lot of redfish out in the beaches?
No.
Yeah, it seems like it slowed down a little bit. That water temp really got crazy hot, and they kind of spread out on us a little bit. But a lot of sharks around. I heard you were catching
I caught
sharks
one
on
today.
the beach.
You know,
Yeah.
a lot of shovel nose.
Yeah, bonnet heads and those black tips get out there pretty heavy
Black
too.
tips. Yep.
Any sheep's head?
A few more drum than sheep's head, but yeah, almost daily somebody's getting a sheep's head.
Nice. And then there's
Who's
you.
that?
That's you. Sporting that Bel Air bait and tackle hat.
That was actually this week. I think I sent you 3 pictures grouped together, and that was all this past week before we had the blow.
And what you guys don't realize is Scott always sends us a few of these photos. If you've been watching the show for a while, you always see a few of these photos. But you got to remember that he can only get photos of his fish when there's someone around to take his photo. So like the other morning, you said you caught 9 over slot snook, and you only sent me a photo of 1 fish.
Yeah.
So there is countless snook caught through the week that we don't get photos of for the show. So
Yeah, well, I try to send you something, you know, some content. You know, either myself or Amy or whoever's down there fishing. That's a personal
beautiful
best.
fish.
That's yeah.
How
And
big
you don't
was
get
that
many
one?
of them when you take a picture to open her mouth like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a big fish.
Yeah,
That's got to
it
be,
was,
what, 38, 37?
Maybe not quite, but yeah, 36 to 37 right in there, I would say.
That's a stud fish, man. Beautiful. you guys did well this week, huh?
Yeah, last week was the best that I've had so far.
Yeah.
It had started very slow. We should have had fish 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they weren't around. I mean, one here or there, but not the schools. But yet last week, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it turned on.
Yeah, it picked up.
Yeah.
Our buddy John. Have you met John?
I met him down at John's Pass a couple times.
Yeah, he's a good
dude.
He's
a great guy.
He's a
great guy.
He's
Doesn't
a
mind sharing secrets.
Oh yeah.
Everybody loves him. You know, he's not one of these guys that's blurring the pictures.
No, he does not care, and he'll talk to anybody.
Yeah.
He's so nice, super approachable.
Great guy.
And man, he catches some good snook. But he's a nighttime guy. You're a daytime guy.
Yeah. You know, when I first started, when I was a kid and stuff, I thought that was the only way you could catch them is nighttime around the dock lights or, you know, John's Pass, whatever. But then when I started realizing that they were out there on the beach, more so by accident, just being out at the beach and going, what's this? You know, this is back, you know, a long time ago. But then we started targeting them, and I always started with artificials. But now, pretty much 99% of the time, I'm using live bait.
You know what John was telling me? So he's a nighttime nighttime pass fisherman around the dock lights and bridge lights. But he's lately been sending me some photos in the daytime, and so he'll be fishing the pass.
He's coming over to the light side.
Yeah. So what happens is after sunrise, he'll move out a little bit, and he follows the fish out of the pass. So when it gets bright, that sunrise comes up, and the same thing at the dock. I was making fun of somebody the other day, Jose. Josh, you would like that. I was making fun of Jose. He showed up for a half-day trip or a 10-hour trip, but he was late. So he showed up like 5 minutes before the trip left at 7 a.m. Well, the sunrise is way earlier than that.
Yeah.
So by the time he had shown up, the sun had already broken. And in John's Pass, like at Hubbard's dock, before sunrise, those fish get stacked up, and they're generally pretty active.
Give me a call.
But literally, as soon as you see that orange crescent break the horizon, it's like, it's like someone hit a light switch. They're gone.
That's amazing.
They sink and disappear.
And if you could figure out exactly where they go, you know.
Yeah, well, it seems like John Sasser is figuring it out. They just swim right out onto the beach.
Love it.
And he follows them around the corner, so it's pretty awesome. You guys getting some trout out there too, huh?
I will tell you that in all the years that I've fished, and most of the guides and everybody I talk to agree, it's been the best trout year I have ever seen.
And Mike Anderson is saying the same thing.
It's been incredible.
Crazy.
It started back in the winter, wading the flats down south around Fort DeSoto, down near the Skyway. It started there, and the beaches, almost anywhere that you want to go on the beaches right now is got trout.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's days where you quit fishing, but you'd catch 20 or 30 if you wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
But
they're in the way of the snow.
It slowed down just a little bit. Like today, I think I caught 8 or 10, and I was just testing to see if there was some snook around. But so they're still around.
Yeah.
And they're good size. I mean, I've caught some 26s.
What?
Yeah, 26s.
Wow. One of the biggest trout I ever caught was in Grill Pass on that little flat just inside
I know
of
exactly
Mary
what
Pier.
you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that little flat, and it used to be a lot better nowadays with the boat traffic.
Used to do good with flounder there along that edge.
Yeah, on the inside of it. Yeah, but that flat has pretty much been decimated by boat traffic and just all the water flow in Pass Grill. Yeah. But when I was 10, 12, 14 years old, that was one of the most productive little flats. And I'll never forget it. I was throwing a mirror lure top pup. And I overcast the flat and was working it back over that edge towards me. And man, this yellow mouth came out of nowhere and smacked it. And at first I thought it was a snook because of how explosive and big and silver-sided it was. But then you saw that yellow mouth, and it was unmistakably a trout. And it was a hard fight. It was crazy.
Well, I want to tell you probably the biggest, I wasn't measuring them back then, but one of the biggest trout I've ever caught was in Allen's Creek at the mouth, and I was working a jig, same exact thing. It was a little drop off, and as I brought it in like the last jig, I see this mouth open up and inhale it, and I'd like to tell you it was a great fight. I took 2 steps back. It had to be every bit of 28, probably one of the biggest I've ever caught.
That's awesome. Well, so a little backstory. Scott, I actually met Scott because his son Nolan and I were really, really close friends in high school, and Nolan and I used to fish together all the time back when we were in middle school, really.
That's right.
And into high school, and we always used to joke around, Nolan and I, because when you're fishing the flat, a lot of times, like often, when you're drifting the flat, the trout almost get up underneath the boat. And like as you get close to the boat and you're about to give up, that's when that big trout will come out from underneath the boat.
They're not like snook. They're not quite as smart.
Yeah.
And they will do that. Sometimes we've actually gone on flats and motored around to stir them up, to get them going. Because sometimes they'll just kind of be lethargic, and especially in the winter, they'll be in little potholes and stuff. And you think just the opposite. Don't spook them, but this would get them going. But trout are a lot of fun, and they've been great this year because before the snook really showed up, it gave us something to do.
Yeah.
And speaking about Nolan, I remember dropping him off at your house all the time, like almost every weekend he was coming over. But I still wonder if he was coming to see you or your sisters.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Yeah. I think I had a lot of friends for that reason. And I had a boat. So.
And you had a boat.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. I bought a boat when I was 8 years old, and I had 3 sisters. So, yeah, I had a lot of friends.
A true fishing family when they let their young kids, 10, 12, 13, have their own boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not many do.
I asked my dad for a boat, and he was like, "You better get a job." So, yeah, it taught me a lot. And it was an $800 boat. So, needless to say, Nolan and I learned how to work on motors a lot because it broke down often.
I think I remember you telling me some of those stories.
Yeah.
Dad has to come get you.
Well,
but I remember a lot of our pontoon trips. At the end of school, your dad would he'd pick all the kids up that were in your class, pick them up and take them out to the island behind John's Pass, and we'd have a little party out there and a bonfire, and that was always so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
I think I even got in on some of the shuttling with my boat at the time. So.
Yeah, the island parties were a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were infamous at our private high school. We got in a lot of trouble for those. All right, so moving on from that, let's get right into the weather, and then we're going to dive into when, where, how to catch lots of snook. And Josh is reminding me, before we get to the weather, I forgot we skipped right over Nearshore. So let's hop into the Nearshore photos real quick, show you what we're catching Nearshore, then we'll get to weather, and then into some beach fishing university. So Nearshore, seeing a lot of those nice gray snapper, lots of family fun out there, having a blast on the private charters and the party boats. Seeing the mahi really heavy as of lately. It's crazy how the mahi showed up virtually everywhere. Red grouper staying open for us. We're catching quite a few of them. Super excited to keep really hammering on those red grouper. Our buddy Kevin Coyne showing off a nice catch and release gag grouper on the jig. Some beautiful mutton action from the 12-hour night snapper. Another night snapper mutton. Some red grouper definitely doing well offshore for us on the Flying Hub 2, on the private fishing charters, the 12-hour extremes. The 10-hour trips catching a handful of the red grouper too. We're seeing some nice red grouper on our nearshore charters aboard the Hub. The offshore charters on the Flying Hub 2, some red snapper opened up, and we got some keepers. The Hub 8-hour, or it was a Hub 10-hour charter today, and the Flying Hub 2 12-hour charter today brought home some keeper red snappers. So the Flying Hub 2 extreme trip today caught a boat limit of red snapper, about 10 to 12 keeper red grouper, and some other heads and tails mixed in there. It's a good day.
Yeah. Go back probably 20, 25 years, we didn't really have much of a red snapper fishery at all. And I think what happened, perhaps, just my opinion, is we had some hurricanes and stuff. And this was about when they first started the pipeline.
Yep.
And I truly believe that some of those fish displaced and followed that pipeline. And, I mean, it was very rare to see somebody get a red snapper.
Yeah.
And then now, some guys think they're almost a nuisance. They're trying to drop down for gags or red grouper, and then they can't get through the red snapper.
It's
really
a good
problem.
interesting.
It's a good problem.
Yeah, it's a great problem to have, and it's really, I think, the greatest conservation success story of my lifetime, for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Gulf of Mexico, if you look back, it's been really interesting diving into like the science and management side of things and talking to these scientists that are very extremely educated and knowledgeable. Like they have like historical like information from the 1920s
Wow.
when, and even before that in the late 1800s and into the like 1905s, like when they used to sail these big schooner ships out there with 3 or 4 masts, and they had holes in the bottom of the sailboat because there was no ice, so they didn't have ice, so they would sail these sailboats out there, pool the holes, fill the hull with water, so that way they could catch fish, put them in the hull, the fish stayed
them a little
alive.
longer.
Yeah, fish stayed alive, and then they could go offshore commercial fishing and come back inshore with live fish in the boat. And so back then, off our coast, all they caught was red snapper. That's all there was.
Isn't that something?
And those folks basically wiped them out, essentially. And then recreational fishing, my grandfather, back in 1920s, 1928, Hubbard's Marina started. They caught a lot of red snapper. In the 40s, 1946, they got our first internal combustion charter boat, and they got a lot of red snapper in the late 40s or through the 50s, into the 60s, and even into the early 70s, and then they disappeared.
Yeah.
And they started. I remember, I think I was like 12 years old. I was on a 39-hour trip, and I reeled up a red snapper. And at the time, I was like, what's this?
It's the coolest thing, the coloring.
Yeah, and I had to take it to the captain of the boat. I was like, what's this thing?
Yeah.
And Capt Matt, who had been working that overnight trip for a really long time, knew what it was because he used to see them. And then we went through that whole red snapper debacle, 3-day season, and man, they have bounced back in a big way.
Well, I saw the same thing happen over the years with kingfish.
Yeah.
Back when I was younger and fishing a lot with Jay Mastery, the Mastery family.
The kingfish
and speaking
legend.
and speaking of bait wells, what we used back then, nobody used pumps. We had holes drilled, and we had a fish, essentially like a fish box, but it was the bait well. But there were holes drilled. Some were drilled in one direction and some the other. Some let water in and some let water out. So you had to tune it. So you'd go out there sometimes with a drill and tune it so you didn't overflow the well. But that's how we used to carry our live bait. But you never had to worry about a pump breaking down. But
Because you just drilled holes in the boat.
You just drilled holes in the boat. So we actually, there was a very good kingfishery.
Yeah.
And then, we used to just go right there off the Don Cesar. We'd net sardines, Spanish sardines, right in there in 15 foot of water. You'd see the pelicans diving. And then the net boats got in there.
Yeah.
And we didn't even know what was going on, but we would hear reports from the people up on the beach saying, there were lights out here last night and it looked like big boats. Well, they were bringing in those big purse seines and
nets.
stuff. Yeah. And, we didn't have any kingfish tournaments. You couldn't really target them at all. And then after, I don't know, maybe it was probably 10, 12 years, they started to trickle back in to the point where they could start doing tournaments again. Seems like we're going through another lull again, though.
Yeah. It's definitely, kingfish has been very cyclical in our area.
Yeah.
And
I think that's what people don't understand. They want to always put a blame on something, but sometimes it's just cyclical.
Yeah.
Always say they got fins and tails. Nobody says that they
no
have to
fences.
show up.
There's no fences out there.
That's right. So you just never know. You just go fish and see what happens.
Love it. All right, so we showed you the inshore. We showed you the nearshore. Let's get into the weather real quick, and we'll do our first giveaway and then get into some beach snook fishing questions. So hubbardsmarina.com, hit fishing trips, hit weather links, and we're going to start in the 5 and 10 hour forecast area for wind finder. As you can see here, looking really, really nice all the way through. Most of the start of the work week gets a little bit more moderate there Tuesday, Wednesday, but nothing crazy, still less than 3 foot. And then really lays down again for this upcoming weekend. And if you were listening to the radio show yesterday, we were talking about potentially this weekend seeing some tropical weather. and that weather threat has dissipated and been delayed, at least as it was this morning. So looks really, really good here tomorrow, and we've got a super light load in the afternoon, half day tomorrow. Then Tuesday, wind picks up a little bit, maybe some rain. That residual weather lasts until Wednesday into Thursday a little bit, and then really nice weekend ahead. Potentially like June 11th, 12th, 13th is when that tropical threat has kind of moved back to, but still very, very early. And as we just saw, weather can really rapidly change this time of year. So we had 24 hours ago a pretty decent hurricane threat for our area, or tropical system threat for our area around the 9th, 10th, and 11th. And now this morning, just about 18 hours after, it's shifted all the way to like around the 12th, 13th.
Remember the GFS and all was really kind of showing something could. But,
yeah.
you know, talking to some meteorologists and stuff, they kind of say, look, anything after about 3 or 4 days is kind of an educated guess.
Yeah.
We can pretty well lock in on things, you know, when it gets within 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And I love that wind finder. I use it every day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge tool to what I do.
Yeah, wind finder is definitely great, and it uses the GFS model, but there's other models out there, right?
Sure.
So you have to kind of keep an eye on that, and that's a big thing. People get so freaked out and worked up about those long-range GFS models, because GFS is the only model that shows you more than like 7-8 days in the future. All the other models, the Euro model, the Korean model, the Navy model, they only go about 6, 7, 8 days out. So you can't use those future forecasts to scare people.
Right, and that's what a lot of those sites are doing.
Yeah,
you know, just to get
they
some
get clicks.
Yeah, exactly. But I love that you do these weather segments and you really break it down, because you're not going to get that in a lot of places. And what some people don't understand too is you'll turn on one of the news stations and it'll say winds out of the east at 10, but that's not the marine forecast.
Yeah.
And so that's the metropolitan forecast. They're behind some building in Tampa, you know. But you get out there on the water and it's a totally different
100%.
animal. So that's where wind finder and some of these others know and stuff will give you the marine forecast, and that's what you're really looking for if you're talking about doing something on the water. Too many people get fooled going, well, it said 5 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a C's, right?
Yeah.
You know, 5 to 10.
Definitely marine forecasts are super important. That's why we have that weather links page built for you guys right on our website. Click fishing trips. Second thing down is weather links. Also, we have a very long red snapper season of 3.5 months that kicked off today. Snapper season ends for us September 15th, so it's a long season ahead, so we're bound to have some of these tropical threats, but don't get worked up unless it's 3, 4, 5 days out. Then we have a little bit more confidence. So it's things to watch, but not things to obsess, freak out, or reschedule about yet. So let's first of all do our first giveaway of the night. We are going to give away a 10-hour all day for 2 guests. Remember, in order to win free fishing trips, guys, you do have to watch the whole show. You'd have to comment one time on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. Then you have to watch the show live, because if you're picked as one of these lucky winners randomly throughout the show, you've got 5 minutes or less to text us your full home address at the phone number on the screen. So you got to watch live, comment once on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream, and then stay watching live, because you got 5 minutes or less if you're picked as one of the lucky winners. That's how you enter. That's how you claim it. That's how you win the free trip. So first giveaway of the night, 10-hour all day for 2 guests, goes to Taylor Burklow from Mississippi. Congratulations, Taylor, on that lucky win for the 10-hour all day for 2 guests. All right, now we've done our first giveaway of the night. Let's hop into some of these questions for Mr. Scott Snook over here. So if you were, so Scott, first of all, for viewers' information, you are fishing from shore on foot. You're not using a kayak, you're not using a bike, you're not using a boat. This is something any of you guys could do.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done others, obviously, but
a lot. Yeah.
That's what I do now. Is strictly on foot. And in fact, I think one time I went with one of my buddies last year and caught a snook out of the boat, and I can't remember before that the last time I went out in the boat. But anyway, it can be effective.
So shore-based on foot. So you guys tomorrow could go out and get a reel and a rod and go to the beach and catch yourself a big snook based on what we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, as far as rod and reel choices, what are you going with?
Well, I'm a little extreme on the light side, but
I would say very.
We're talking snook, and they can be very, picky and smart. So I try to use as little a terminal tackle, as light as terminal tackle as I can. So we're talking a 7-foot rod, medium fast taper. Right now I'm using 8-pound.
8-pound, he said.
Yeah,
8
pound with 20-pound leader. And because I'm in open water, you can play the fish out, called TV drag, you can loosen up a little bit, but because you're not worried about structure. Obviously, those
you're
kind
fishing
of things,
on a beach.
Yeah, obviously those things change if you move into a pass or near a jetty or something. Then that comes into play. But for basic beach fishing, a setup I would say for somebody getting started, I'd say 10-pound, and maybe even a 25-pound leader, just to get your feet wet. But as you have said many times, a rod makes a big difference. The sensitivity, all those kind of things, guides that are going to hold up and not crack, and the rings fall out of them. I did all that. I mean, I've made all the mistakes, but that's why I tend to invest in a little bit better stuff now, because I look at it as a tool.
Yeah.
I don't mind spending. I mean, my one outfit I brought in to show you is about $1,200.
It makes me slobber every time you show me. But and that $1,200 setup is cheaper than the other one you use.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The other one, I actually got that reel in being serviced, or I would have brought it in. But you saw that and you said, I might have to pick one of these.
I've always wanted a Daiwa Exist reel. Yeah. And man,
I've been mostly a Shimano guy, but that is a smooth reel.
Yeah.
I've loved it, and it's super lightweight, and
And why are you going for a lighter weight combo? Why is that so
Well,
important?
I primarily, and this probably was going to be your next question, bait wise, I use shrimp about it. I know I've got all these guide buddies who are like,
this was the most revolutionary thing for me that I learned just the other night talking to Scott.
Yeah.
So out there on the beach, he's beach fishing for snook, super light rod, 7-foot rod, like a 3000 series spinning reel, 8-pound mono, not braid.
Yeah.
But you could even use 10-pound or 12-pound. But essentially, you're using super light mono because you're trying to hide the line from the fish.
Exactly. I wouldn't recommend a monofilament line necessarily to people because you'll get very frustrated with it. I just deal with it. But I figure if I can get a couple more bites a day or even a couple more bites a week, because when you overcast those fish, because I'm sight fishing about 90% of the time, and I see those fish cruising in the swash, and if I overthrow them so I don't spook them, I don't really want them to see that braid, or if they are going to see the braid, I'm going to use probably a 3-foot leader at minimum with the braid, and I like to tie knots that will go easily through the guide, so I can cast that and bring up that monofilament through the guides, whereas somebody using a swivel or something isn't going to be able to do that. If you use a tiny swivel, you can do that if you're not good at tying braid to mono knots, things like that. But I would suggest that that's what you learn to do. The uni knot, the FG, those are good ones. But yeah, so I'm using shrimp, and there's a reason. Not only are they easily accessible. You go down to every bait shop and
they always have
shrimp.
shrimp.
Right. They're easily transported in a bucket. I have a little aerator on my bucket, so it's lightweight. I'm not carrying 8-pound, 5-gallon bucket down the beach.
Yeah.
And I hook them in the horn, under the horn. I don't hook them in the tail. We talked about that.
That was interesting too. So I always bottom fish and hook them right in the tail because I like them to struggle away from my lead weight on the bottom.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I like that tail hook because they're trying to pull that lead weight away.
I agree with you on bigger baits,
Yeah.
100%. I'll tail hook grunts, kingfish, sometimes whiting, even occasionally a ladyfish. Those are the go-to baits. But the shrimp, because it's small and it doesn't have a lot of power, what happens is they don't really swim away from anything. They're just not that strong. what happens is as soon as it hits the water out there, it turns around just from literally the weight of the hook and the surface tension of your line in the water. It turns around.
And it
So
wants to come back to
it
shore.
wants to come back. So I will just slowly swim it, slowly swim it in front of them. So you're trying to intercept that fish.
Yeah.
Is what you're trying to do.
Because that snook is cruising parallel with the
Correct.
beach in that swash
Correct.
channel.
They're either cruising or maybe you're fortunate and you find a school that's laid up and just sitting there where then you got to be a little tricky. You don't want to bomb them, so you kind of work the edge of them a little bit to try not to throw right in the middle of them and spook them, and then you're done. So,
So
but
you don't want to cast at the fish. You want to cast past them.
always
and then,
past them. I mean, if you land short, you may not get another cast.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be always overcast, and then you can always bring it in. But if you short cast, you're going to be picking it up and trying again.
And your shrimp is going to get less frisky and
Less frisky,
Yeah.
and that's the other reason for I use a number 2 hook most of the time with shrimp, not a 2-aught, number 2.
So those were 2 things right there: 8-pound test and a number 2 hook. So super small hook. So those were 2 really eye-opening
with
things
shrimp.
that I learned talking
Yeah.
to you.
Now with the bigger baits, the pinfish, the grunts, things like that, I will bump up to a 2-aught or a 3-aught hook, but 90% of the time I'm using that light tackle.
Yeah,
And
'cause
you
when I
need
use
that for the
shrimp-
you
When
know.
when I use shrimp at the dock to catch a snook, I'll use like a 1-aught hook, and I'll use probably 40-pound. Sometimes I have to drop to 30, but I'm going to get broke off a lot of times. If the water's dirty, I can get away with 50-pound fluoro, and that's what I'm using around the dock. And you have to force that fish.
And that makes sense. It's just a totally different fishery.
I need a 4,000
totally different
40-pound
fishery,
drag.
right? You need that heavy leader because you got to lock down, and they got that rough sandpaper mouth,
Yeah.
and they start shaking their head, and it's going to bust off. So yeah, but for what I do with the lighter set drags and the shrimp, the other reason, 2 reasons I love shrimp, is first of all, it's a delicate presentation. It's not crashing down, I should say, in front of them. So it's a delicate presentation. You can kind of cast close to them without, spooking them. And then it stays, here's a big one, it stays in the target zone longer.
It
That fish
doesn't
is coming,
swim around.
right, using a pilchard or a pinfish or something, he's going to be, and sometimes that turns them on. Don't get me wrong. They like to chase baits sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'll use it, believe me. But for the most part, they're going to see that shrimp, and it's going to stay in front of them a little bit longer, not run away from them. And the hookup ratio is excellent.
Because they're cruising the beach. They're not necessarily actively hunting. But if they're cruising the beach and they see a little tasty morsel in front of them, they're just going to snap it up on the way.
That's so true.
Little
Because
road
it's
snack.
very, very seldom that I actually see snook actively feeding.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll see one chasing a whiting or
Yeah.
some bait comes by, but that's seldom.
Yeah.
I often wonder why they even bother to hit a shrimp during the daytime. That's not a natural
Yeah.
phenomenon. Shrimp come out at night, they come out of the grass and stuff, but I feel like there's imitators, and then there's baits that actually, besides an imitator, it's what do I want to say? The word.
Just like natural, matching the hatch.
An imitator, and it's that, but they're attracted to a movement. When I fly fished a lot, and when I fly fish for tarpon and snook, what out in nature is yellow and blue and all these exotic colors? But it's the attraction, it's the imitation.
movement.
It's not the imitation. It's the movement. It's that pulsing maybe of the fly.
Yeah.
So the same thing with shrimp. I think they're hitting it because it's something moving and it is alive. But I will tell you this, and I talked to you about this the other night. I do not like big shrimp.
There it is. So
I
I was
do
going to
not.
ask you this.
Do not.
Because when I'm hearing him talk about using shrimp on the beach, to me, I'm like instantly, all right, he wants really big shrimp. He's going to go with those jumbo shrimp because that snook cruising the beach sees that 5.5, 6-inch shrimp. He's going to eat it. No.
He thinks it's Godzilla and he runs from it.
You don't use
I'm
big
serious. Absolutely not.
So what size shrimp are we talking?
A medium shrimp.
So you're
but I
talking
catch almost as
3
many.
inches.
We make a joke sometimes when the bait shops are really low and they don't have much. We call them eyebrow shrimp. They're like this.
2 inches.
If you scale down, I'll scale down to a number 6 hook, and yeah, And I
You've
use a
caught-
number 6 with pilchards.
You've caught a 30+ inch snook on a number 6 hook.
Oh, countless. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
With
crazy.
pilchards, I almost always use a number 6 because I don't want that big hook hanging out the mouth of a pilchard.
So you're talking about a greenback. You're using a number 6 hook?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
An
Yeah.
8-pound test.
Yeah, but with shrimp, I can get away with a number 2, a little bit bigger hook because it kind of matches the shrimp. You
And
know,
the
it's got all
antennas.
the antennas and,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So they're not as worried about it. So shrimp, for those reasons, it's easily accessible. It stays in the target zone longer, and your hookup ratio is great.
Yeah.
Where we call it, my buddies, when we're using big baits, I mean, it'll get your hits, but we call it the curse of the big bait.
Mhm.
It's because it's so hard to pull a hook out of the mouth of your bait unless you hook it very shallow, and so it doesn't find any purchase in their mouth. So you miss a lot. I mean, you're probably good if you got a 50% hookup ratio with a big bait. Right, where you're going to have a 80-90% with a shrimp or a small pilchard or something because they're going to bucket mouth it. And I always said that, think about this. Here's a mouth of a snook, and say I'm using a ladyfish,
Yeah.
a live ladyfish or a big grunt.
Yeah.
That thing, she swallows it into her mouth, but that bait is taking up 3/4 of the inside of that mouth.
Yeah, so if you got a bait this big,
right,
and it's snook
the
mouth
hook
is this
sometimes, and then you go to set the hook. What happens is that hook either hooks back into the fish and double hooks the bait,
Mhm.
which you're not going to get a hookup, or it can't find purchase because the bait's taking up all the
room.
Yeah, the room. So I love big baits, and that's the way to catch big fish. Don't get me wrong. I would not trade that for anything when there's big fish around. But for the average walking down the beach, having fun, and still being able to catch big fish, I've caught
So
many.
you're
But
cruising the
they're
beach with a one rod and reel. You're cruising the beach with super light tackle. And where's your tackle box?
right here in my pocket.
This tackle box is so epic because in my head I'm envisioning like, all right, so do you carry like a wagon? Like what are we doing here?
Some do.
No, he's carrying a bait bucket, a rod, and then he's got a modified tackle box. This is so cool.
Yeah, they got the clippers, and I got my leader material right here, and then you open it up, and you got your hooks, and occasionally I'll use a little tiny split shot.
Yeah.
I don't ever use a big split shot, but a tiny one pushed right up against the hook.
Can I see that for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So this is an Icebreakers mint container.
Well, I lost my other one, and I made this one up.
No, it's inventive, and it's
Yeah.
got different assorted size hooks in your Icebreakers. You've got a spool glued to the underside of this thing that you fill with your mono or your leader. In this case, this is 20-pound fluoro.
Yes.
And then you've got a hair tie so you can attach your cutters.
A hair tie, yeah.
This is awesome.
What
This
else
is
I
inventive.
have a little bit too, because I want to carry as least as possible. In my bait bucket, I've made some little bungee straps in there. I have my pliers and my tape measure in there, so I
Nice.
don't have extras.
So your pockets are
So the
slim.
guys put bait in the bait bucket and they go, you got pliers and everything? Yeah, in there.
I'm aware. So the pliers and the ruler or your measuring device are inside the bucket.
Inside the bait bucket.
Oh, so
Yeah.
they can't fall off while you're
Can't
cruising.
fall out, and I don't have to carry them separate or hang them around my neck or anything. So,
Nice.
but I do carry a pouch for my phone to get photos, and I go through those quite a bit because I need to get it. I need to get one a little wider because I kind of rip the seams out of them, and they're not waterproof anymore.
But yeah, you take some good photos while you're out there. So we showed you the photos of what we've been catching this week, but here's some photos of Scott's exploits on the beach. He sent me some of his favorites and some of the notable catches, and just a few of these notable catches. I mean, you catch a lot of big fish out there on the beach. It's crazy. And like I said earlier, he's only sending photos when he has someone around to take these pictures. So you're catching a ton of snook. You were mentioning that one summer you tried to keep records of how many you caught.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dave Bays at Dogfish Tackle. He's
Yeah.
the owner now. He, one year, I think it was about 5-6 years ago, he said to me, how many beach fish or how many land-based fish do you think you catch in a year? And I go, I have no idea. I have no idea. He goes, 400? And I go, that's a lot of snook. I don't know. Maybe I'll keep a log.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept a log, and I think the first year I was around 700, and
That's
then
crazy.
it kind of grew to 8, and then I did it for about 4 years, and my last year that I kept records was 1,220. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't.
1,220 snook.
I didn't.
And that's only when they're on the beach. So that's like 3.5 months.
Right.
Three and a half months, 1,200 snook.
But a few of those might have been, a couple of them might have been in the bay,
Yeah.
during the winter. But most of them, yeah. And but to be honest with you, I didn't want it to be about the numbers.
Yeah.
And that's what you started thinking about, is like, oh, I lost that one. No, I can't write that down.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you got away from it.
I got away from it. I wanted to be about fun and not
Yeah.
about fishing for numbers.
Yeah.
So the picture you have up there now, can they see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my personal best, and that was a couple years ago. Again, that's 10-pound test, 20-pound leader.
Didn't you have to swim for that fish?
I didn't swim for it, but it was 45 inches. And it just so happened that day there was only one guy that I knew, and he was way down the beach, but he saw me fighting this thing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to go to a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but he's like, man, I got to see what he's got. I got to see. So fortunately, he was there and was able to get that picture. Otherwise, I may have never had a documentation of it.
45
But it
inch
took
snook.
about, that one probably took 30 minutes and a good quarter of a mile down the beach, if not more,
Running after it.
chasing after it. And they run out to that sandbar out there where you see the second
wave
break out
breaking.
there, and they go out and beyond that. In fact, one of the best memories I've ever had, I'll never forget. It was just like that with a wave, and there was a snook that was out on the bar that I had hooked up, and
He was in the wave?
It was in the wave, perfectly silhouetted. I'd pay $100 for that picture in a heartbeat, because it was just a memory
That's
you'll never
crazy.
forget. I see dolphin in the waves
Mhm.
and stuff. It was a perfectly placed snook in those waves. It happened to be clear like that. But
And you happen to be hooked up to it.
and you happen to be hooked up to it. That's the best part. But yeah, that was on a really big bait there. So my hook was a little bit bigger. That was not on a shrimp. I believe that was on a grunt.
That is a big, big
Yeah.
fish.
And my
Sight
buddy-
fish, that guy?
No, it was a little. I mean, it looks kind of clean. I think
Mm-hmm.
you cleaned the picture up a little bit when I sent it to you,
Maybe.
but it wasn't super clean. So no, and when it's rough like that, I can't really sight fish them very
Mhm.
well. But I do remember my buddy, when I sent him that picture, that used to live here and he moved up to Kentucky. He said, "Scott, that's a fish of a lifetime." And I said, "I agree.
Mhm.
I'll never catch one. I don't think ever that big again." But I
That was
think
a
I
big
saw
dog.
one that big. I was reeling in a jack one day about that big,
Mm-hmm.
and
You were really,
Boom.
you got to hold it up a
Yeah.
little bit so they can see.
a jack about this big. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't a little jack. It was a good sized jack.
Yeah.
Boom! And out of the water comes this head. Looked like that.
He
And of
ate
course,
your
he
jack
ate the
crevalle
jack.
that you were reeling in?
Right. Of course, I couldn't hook it because the
The
hook
hook was
is in
too
the
small.
mouth of the jack. But what a sight! My buddy was standing next
so
to me.
you were reeling in a fish and you got depredation from a snook?
Absolutely.
That's crazy. I've never had that happen.
My biggest wahoo I caught offshore was deprivation from, I had a mahi on, and I left it hooked up. You know how you do with mahi?
Yeah,
you
to
leave
keep
one
the
in the
chicken
rod holder.
dolphin.
And when we went to leave, I went to reel up, and there was a wahoo that had eaten that dolphin, and it hooked itself. The only reason it hooked itself is we were using a stinger rig because we were kind of fishing for kingfish and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but talk about getting lucky,
Wow.
eating that dolphin. And it was my biggest wahoo. So
That's awesome.
You never know. It's crazy.
And he
stuff.
was just chilling there, didn't even know he was hooked.
Didn't even know he was hooked. Swim around the boat. We never ran over and grabbed a rod until we were ready to leave, and there he was. That was
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
He might have froze up.
Uh-oh. Dang. Lost
It's
it.
moving now.
What about on YouTube? Are we still live on YouTube? That's crazy.
That's where I usually watch it, on YouTube.
Yeah, it's YouTube
What all of
quality
the
seems
for-
to be a lot better.
What are the platforms you can watch it on?
Twitch, Trovo, YouTube, Facebook. What about on YouTube? We stream to a bunch of different Facebook pages.
Okay.
So, yeah, YouTube is working. It's just Facebook. Well, just finish up on YouTube, I guess. That's weird, man. Did it totally end the video on Facebook?
No, it's still going.
Maybe it'll come back. Who knows? So basically, you're looking for what you can do to try. So we talked about the tackle. We talked about the bait. Basically, a 3-inch medium shrimp is what you're going for. And then how are you choosing the area?
That's the important part that you learn by doing your homework. I always say to somebody, get out there and do your homework. You know, that's what I've done for the last 30, 40 years, you know, getting out and doing your homework. But I use those tools, whether it be beach cams, wind finder, and I kind of make a game plan. It can change, but I kind of have an idea of my game plan. And I did have a video or a picture up there of the way Pinellas County is shaped.
Yeah, can you pull that up in the photos that you sent?
It might help. It's
because the people that
it's
are
a little
missing,
bit hard to explain. Yeah.
The people that are missing out on the show can always watch the clips that we post later.
Okay, there
Facebook.
it is.
All right, so Pinellas County.
Excuse my arrows, but
Pinellas County is shaped oddly, right? So you use the shape of the county.
Yes, and I learned this way back when I surfed a lot. It made a big difference on where the swell was coming from by the shape of the peninsula. But as you can see there, this is a south wind, and it's pretty much onshore at Madeira Beach and Reddington, okay?
Yeah.
So that would be prohibitive for me, perhaps, if it's a pretty stiff wind, say 10 and above, for sight fishing.
Yeah.
And I don't like to do a lot of blind fishing. I prefer to go on the days where I can sight fish.
Yeah.
So what happens there is that's an onshore wind, and you're probably going to have, say, with a 10, 12 knot wind, probably 2 to 3 foot.
Yeah.
Which is really
Makes
borderline.
it tough.
Really borderline. But now you go up at the top of the picture there, and as that curves to the north, that peninsula, that is now, that same direction is now an offshore wind.
So
or at the
up there,
very
clear
least, you
water.
might have a 1 foot swell.
Yeah.
You know, just residual coming around the corner.
So you're using the shape of the county.
The shape of the
block
county
the
to make a
wind for
lot
you.
of the decisions. Yep.
Okay.
And then, of course, using wind finder to see how windy it is. Your perfect scenario is something out of the east. Unfortunately, you know something, it is weird. I have seen over the last 30 years or so, we have had a pattern change from when I was growing up. Used to always be east wind in the morning, sea breeze, west wind in the afternoon. We get a lot more south winds now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of days where you really have to follow this or just pick your days to go, because it's the wind.
So
if you're going to sight fish, you like an offshore wind, polarized sunglasses. A lot of the fish are going to be out. Some people ask me, well, do you stay on shore? Do you fish out? Do you like high tide? Do you like low tide? Yeah, for all of it. You know, it all depends. Depending on where you're going to fish.
I feel like high tide would be better because you're going to have
If I had to pick
water.
one, well, it doesn't seem to matter too much, and it doesn't matter whether it's a new moon, a full moon, no tide, fast tide. Doesn't make a bit of difference.
Because
In
you're
fact,
out on the
I kind
beach.
of and I kind of laugh at the guys. Go, well, what's the major and minor? Doesn't matter. They'll say, well, I did pretty good on the minor or the major. Yeah, but go back if you keep a log and see how many times it didn't work. There's so many other factors. Is there fish even there? Was there sunlight? Was there mud? You know what? There's so many other factors than just the salooner.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
It's I can tell you have that annoyance when people ask you the salooner. For us offshore, it's, well, what about the full moon's coming up? Is it better 1 or 2 days before it or 2 to 3 days after it? It's like, well, that's one variable of 25.
Are the fish even there? You could have every variable in the world working for you, but it's January. You really snook on the beach in January. There a fish that comes out on the beach now, starting usually around beginning of April. You'll start to see a few, and then it peaks in June and July, and then still pretty good in August, and then it's. I used to think it was over in August because a lot of the places I fished there when they fish, and then I get these phone calls. Hey, I'm down here at such and such, and I saw some snook go by. Oh. Yeah, so now I can usually extend my my fishing till into September, October.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've even caught some in December.
Wow.
Yeah.
On the beach?
Yep, but it's got to be the right
Stay
conditions.
warm.
Yeah, I went down south about 3 years ago. This was a real anomaly. We had some bait around. Water temperature was unusually warm for December. It was December 15th, and I caught 50 snook.
Wow.
Yeah, these were what I call surf snook.
Yeah.
I don't, in this particular place, I never catch any big ones.
Yeah.
But it's a blast, and there's nobody down there. It's kind of a private area. But
I know where you're
in
talking
December,
about. You've taken me there.
yeah, in December.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Surf snook. I
Yeah.
love it. I like that term.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we appreciate everybody joining us tonight and hanging out. Definitely disappointed we lost the second half of or not the second half, but the last 10 minutes or so there on Facebook. But they can always watch on YouTube like the rest of you guys did. So hopefully you enjoyed the show. We have a new software where we're going to be able to take these clips and add them to our social media throughout the week. So definitely stay tuned to Hubbard's Marina's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. We're going to be clipping a lot of this stuff up, and we could pretty much take the second half of this show and turn it into a how-to video as well. So some cool stuff. Definitely appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me. And they can go back in archives and see it later.
Yeah,
as
it's
well,
live
too,
on
right?
YouTube forever.
Great.
Yeah, so it'll live on YouTube forever. Facebook is now deleting live videos every 30 days, so they only live on Facebook for 30 days, but YouTube, it's forever. Don't go back and watch our old Hubbard's Marina videos. Don't recommend. 10 out
We're
of 10.
always growing. We're always learning.
Yeah,
you know?
improving a lot,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
I have one question for him.
Ask Scott if it's a rod or a pole. Is it a rod or a pole?
I know who that's coming from, and I'm not going to argue with her. She grew up fishing with a pole in freshwater.
I've always called it a fishing rod. I've never heard it called a
Me
fishing.
too.
Yeah.
Me too.
That's like up north. What do they call it? Pop, not
Pop.
soda.
Right.
Every
right.
time I go to Michigan,
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
Yep.
it's a soda.
Michigan, Wisconsin, it's pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Everybody's got different terms.
Yeah, but either one is fine. I know. I always think of a pole as a cane pole.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you kind of agree with me.
I'm gonna
on
have to
that
mess with Amy next time I see her on that
one. Yeah.
one.
Oh, I got a question for you. What knot do you prefer? Generally
braid,
offshore.
braid
Braid.
to. So the best one, like if you're tournament fishing, the PR bobbin knot.
Yeah, that's a good one.
FG knot, I think, is the strongest that you can tie kind of on the fly.
Yeah, on the fly.
But my favorite that I use the most is a reverse Albright because it's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier. That's what I know the best.
I used a lot of those.
But if
on
it
target
doesn't
fish.
have to go through the guides, I'm using a double uni.
Yeah.
It's the quickest, fastest, easiest. Double uni is awesome. But if it has to go through the guides, a double uni inshore will still go through the guides. But if you're tying 60-pound mono to 60-pound braid, it's not going to go through the guides.
Challenged Amy and her husband Bobby to learn to tie the uni knot and then the FG, and that's why I'm here, because I lost the bet. So
They nailed the FG?
Well,
FG is not
it's
easy.
not consistent, but
Yeah.
it was consistent enough where I lost the bet. Okay? But the uni got it down good now.
That's awesome.
You know.
Well, we appreciate y'all for tuning in and hanging out with us tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and hopefully we'll see you again next week for another episode. Remember, every Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Apologies for the little hiccup there at the end tonight, but hopefully we'll see you again next week for another episode. And don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. And also, make sure you check out Scott on Instagram, Scott_Snook, if you want to follow this guy and watch his exploits. And definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. Facebook's not live, right, Josh?
No.
All right, so that's it. We'll see you guys next week for another episode. Have a good night, y'all.